guys, we're going to try something new. I'm going to stand in this video, so it should be a little different. All right, so we are taking notes on finding unit rates, okay? Finding unit rates. I did assign a video that might have helped a little bit, and so we're going to make this kind of our official unit rate notes that you can reference back. So please label a page in your math notebook, unit rates, and we're going to write the official vocabulary definition for this. So a unit rate is a comparison of two quantities that have different units, such as miles and hours. Okay, so it's a comparison of two quantities that have different units, such as miles and hours. And they give you miles and hours to start with because it's one that we're actually really familiar with, is miles per hour. Well, miles per hour is a unit rate because it's coming down to what 1 hour is, okay? So what we use is ratios. Make sure you can still see that, good. Ratios and rates can be expressed as fractions. So ratios and rates can be expressed as fractions. Okay, so this is why we're moving from learning about fractions to learning about unit rates, okay? Because we got to be really good with fractions to be able to do this. So I am going to erase this. Pause if you need to finish taking the notes. Now, what's specific about unit rates? Because you're probably like, I've done this before. I've done this. No, what you've done are just regular fractions and ratios comparing two things. But what a unit rate is specifically is a ratio with a denominator of 1. Okay, that is called a unit rate. And the reason is, so I'm going to give you some real life examples of why we would need a unit rate. So miles per hour is definitely one of them. So I don't want to know how much I can drive in 5 hours. I want to know how much I can drive in 1 hour. And then if I end up driving 5 hours, I could do the math to figure out how far I'm going to go. Okay? So we want a rate like that to be within 1 hour. So another example is at the grocery store. I might be looking at a box of cereal and a bag of cereal, and because they don't have the same amount in the box and the bag, I can't just compare the price. I can't say, oh, the bag's cheaper than the box, so that's a better deal. No, because what if the bag had way less cereal in it? Yeah, that's the reason it's cheaper. So what the grocery store does, and you have to get really, really close to the tag, like get in the grocery store, get all the way to the tag on the aisle and look at it, and it'll give you a unit rate. It might not call it a unit rate, but that's what it's giving you. So what it's going to do is that price will be broken down to what it is per ounce or per gram or whatever that cereal bag or cereal box is weighed into. So you can say, okay, the box is 23 cents per ounce, but the bag is 25 cents per ounce. You just get less, so you paid less. So the box is still the better deal. And it's a good way to actually make comparisons in the grocery store and not just go with what's cheaper. Because a lot of the times, the stuff that's cheaper is also a worse deal when you look for how much you're actually getting. Okay, so that's what we use unit rates for in real life. It's kind of a big deal so that you're not kind of getting swindled at the store. All right, so let me show you an example. So a unit rate might be 60 miles per. So when I say that, I want to put that line. I want to make it a fraction. per 2 hours. Okay, but we just talked that a unit rate is actually per 1 hour. So what we're going to do is reduce this fraction. Now, when you reduce the fraction, your whole goal is to make the denominator 1. So you ask yourself, what did I do to 2 to make it a 1? I divided by 2. And whatever I do, I just do it to the top. Okay, so this is really 30 miles per 1 hour. And this is the unit rate. That's the math that needs to be done. Okay, so let me show you another one. Okay, so let me show you another one where we go 15 miles per half hour. So first of all, notice this is called a complex fraction because it has a fraction inside of another fraction. And that's why we showed you complex fractions right before we started this math so that you didn't totally freak out. Oh my God, what's going on? This just says 15 divided by 1/2. Okay, but for the sake of unit rates, what we're trying to get is our denominator to be a 1. So what would we have to do to 1/2 to make it a 1? We would need to multiply by 2. And if you make that decision, then you have to do it to the top. And so just like the one we were working with, compare your answers, it's now 30 miles per 1 hour. Okay, so you might have to kind of unreduce, like going the opposite version of reducing, or you might have to reduce. But remember, your goal is to have 1 at the bottom of your fraction. All right, so why don't you try this one, which means you might need to pause the video, but I'll tell you what you're working with, okay? So Paige, she mows 1/6 of an acre in or per 1/4 hour. And we want to know how much she can do in 1 hour because unit rates always come back down to 1 hour, okay? So we're going to ask ourselves, what would we do to 1/4 to make it a 1? In this case, it's relatively easy. We would multiply by 4. So we're going to do that to the top. And if you look, 1/6 times 4/1, you can say 2 goes into this twice and into this 3 times. So 2/3 acre per, and we know 4 times 1/4 is 1 hour. Okay, 2/3 acre per 1 hour. So let's look at another one. So why don't you do this one? I don't know that I gave you enough time to pause on that last one. Sorry about that. But I have 55 feet squared per half hour. Okay, so pause if you need to. All right, so I multiply this by 2, so I multiply this by 2, so that's 110 feet squared per 1 hour. And you're going to have to be really careful on these problems to always use your units. That is the whole point. These are all word problems. They're real life situations. So if you just have 110 per 1, that doesn't mean anything. 110 doesn't mean anything to us. Without the units, this problem is literally meaningless. So you have to put the feet. And if they're using feet squared, you use feet squared. If they're using hour, you use hour. It's just a matter of you coming back to the problem and really making sure you know what units you're working in. Okay? So let's look at this one. Why don't you try this one? So Greta uses 3 cups of pasta for every 3/4 cups of sauce. Okay, so for 3 cups of pasta, she uses 3/4 cups of sauce. So we want to know the unit rate, which means you are trying to make this a 1. Okay, so what did you multiply 3/4 by to get 1/1? Okay, and that's the math that you're really doing, is what are you multiplying by to get the 1? And once you make that decision, then you multiply the top by that same number. So what I can show you is this little trick. I know that if I cancel 4 and 4, I get the 1. And if I cancel 3 and 3, I get 1. So you're multiplying by the, use the right word, the reciprocal. Okay, so here we're going to multiply by 4/3. And if you need to, take it off to the side. 4/3 times 3/1. These cancel. And that's left with 4 cups per 1 cup. Okay, now I know I said the units would be different. Well, actually the book says the units will be different. But it's really more, not that the units are different because we notice these are both cups. It's more important that they're describing 2 different things. This is pasta, this is sauce. Okay, that's a little bit more important than the units actually being different. All right, let's see what time we have left on the video. You are going to start trying these problems. I hope that that makes sense. Sometimes you're going to have to make a comparison where you say this is happening at this unit rate, this is happening at this unit rate, which one's happening quicker or which one's happening slower. All you're doing in that problem is kind of doing 2 unit rate problems at the same time, bringing them both down with the denominator of 1, and then making the comparison. And please do not forget this little trick right here. When you multiply by the reciprocal, you get 1. So it's going to help you when you're trying to figure out these fractions, okay? And this is why they call it a multiplicative inverse, is by multiplying by this number, the inverse, the reciprocal, I get 1, okay? So hopefully this makes sense. Email me if you have any questions, and thank you for watching. Good luck.